So I believe we've all heard of the good old hate trend of people saying the PS5 has no games, which, yeah, they're kinda right. Now, I'm not a PS5 hater though. I think it's the best way to play all these modern AAA games from this generation of gaming. And the tech here still amazes me. Stuff like the SSD being able to launch a game and load straight into gameplay in just a few seconds is absolutely impressive to me. And the ability of being able to render things like this in real time with zero lag is absolutely insane. But of course, these examples I showed are from games that released well into the PS5's life. So what about the launch games for the PS5? These games showcased why the PlayStation 5 is the console of the 9th generation. And I personally think that no other game sold me on the PS5 more like the 3-hour-long tech demo did. Astro's Playroom was released for the PlayStation 5 on November 12, 2020, and it came pre-installed on your console. It is a tech demo made by Team Asobi to showcase the PS5's graphical and technical capabilities. Now, when I got my PlayStation 5 almost 2 years ago now, I had completely forgotten about the existence of Astro's Playroom. I mean, I remember hearing about it during the initial PS5 showcase event, but after that, I never heard about it again. So boy was I excited to set up my PS5 and suddenly remember that there's already a game I could play day one, and almost 2 years later I still keep thinking about how damn good this game is. So today I decided to talk about it for no reason in particular. Booting up the game for the first time, you're greeted by a beautifully simple title screen and a message saying that this game, in fact, is a technical showcase of the PS5 and the DualSense. And immediately once you close that message, you get to play around with a controller demo of all the features packed inside the DualSense controller, which I do want to talk about for a second. I absolutely love this controller. Next to the perfection that the Nintendo Switch Pro controller is, the DualSense is one of my favorite controllers out in the market right now. Reason for that being mainly the adaptive triggers. My god, feeling these for the first time was something else. Returnal is one of the best games I've played on my PS5, and it's one of the very few games that fully relies on the adaptive triggers of the DualSense for in-game mechanics. The technology behind the adaptive triggers is insanely impressive, and it's something I hope to see more of in the future. After the controller demo, you get a quick rundown of Astro's moveset, which consists of moving around, jumping, hovering, and punching. That's it. So after you finish this very short tutorial and pull on an electric wire, you turn on and reveal the CPU Plaza, aka the insides of the PlayStation 5. Astro's Playroom is a 3D platformer that takes place entirely inside the PS5, going through 4 separate worlds or zones representing the internals of the PS5. The GPU called the GPU Jungle, the SSD called the SSD Speedway, the RAM or memory being called the Memory Meadow, and the giant fan being the cooling springs. Now, there's some other places you can go to in the CPU Plaza, but I'll get to that later. For now, let's jump straight into a zone and see what it's all about. God, this game looks so beautiful. The gameplay in Astro's Playroom being so simple is part of what makes it so amazing. It's a simple 3D platformer where you find and collect coins and beat up the enemies that get in your way while you're trying to get to the end of the stage. It's nothing super unique, but it's everything else that carries the experience. The level design is so well done. Yeah, sure, it's extremely linear, but you can find different paths that lead to cool secrets and collectibles, and it's just a fun time overall. Hey, speaking of secrets and collectibles, let's talk about them. There's 2 main collectibles you can find in these levels: puzzle pieces, which we will talk about later, and the artifacts, which are probably my favorite thing about this whole game. These artifacts are high-quality interactable models of every single piece of PlayStation-related hardware across all of PlayStation's history, and each world in the game represents a generation of PlayStation. Memory Meadow representing the original PlayStation from 1994, SSD Speedway being the PS2, Cooling Springs with the PS3, and GPU Jungle being the PS4. There's 2 artifacts hidden in each of the 4 areas in every zone, and collecting these is so fun. The level of detail in these is so impressive, and you can interact with them in many ways. For example, moving around the joysticks on your controller makes the sticks on the DualShock 3 you're looking at to move too. Or pressing the triggers while looking at the PlayStation Move makes the back trigger of it move as well. Astro's Playroom is a full-on love letter to the PlayStation brand, and you can see it everywhere in this game. From the little details like flowers in the grass having the PlayStation icons and colors, to the cables you can walk on straight out being the controller ports from the PlayStation 1. Every single thing in this game has an absurd level of detail and I absolutely love it. Now I want to step away from talking about the artifacts and collectibles and talk about some of my other favorite things about this game. Each zone has a simple 4-area setup. 2 normal 3D platformer areas, and 2 areas where you move exclusively with one of Astro's suits. The normal platforming areas are your usual standard platforming you'd find in any other game, so instead let's talk about each of the 4 suits you use in this game. In Memory Meadows, the suit you have to use here is the ball suit, where you control it by swiping the touchpad on the DualSense. I do really like how the level design is for this suit. It reminds me of Mario Galaxy and I wish I could play with it longer. In SSD Speedway, the suit you use here is the rocket suit, that consists of using the analog triggers to utilize the thrusters on your rocket and fly through space. It's not really super memorable, but I do enjoy playing these sections. The vibrations and feedback the controller gives while you're taking off is so cool. In Cooling Springs, the suit section uses a frog suit, where you hold the triggers to pull in a spring and let go to jump in the aimed direction. Like the last one, it's not super memorable, but I do really enjoy the level design for the frog suit areas. And finally, the best suit in the entire game is in GPU Jungle, that being the monkey suit. You control the monkey suit by tilting the controller to move your arms and pressing the triggers to hook onto rocks so you can climb up. This right here is peak gameplay. Every couple months I reopen the game and play this level just so I can play with the monkey suit again. It's that good. Once you reach the end of the zone you're in, you get to a final little area where you can pick up the console artifact from that zone. And I absolutely adore that in each zone where you're in the room where you can pick up the artifact, you can see and hear that console generation's boot up sequence. Once you're done with whatever zone you were in, you unlock some speedrun challenges where you can beat short extra levels and compete in leaderboards. Now can we take a break to talk about the soundtrack for a second? This game's soundtrack is amazing, and understandably so, coming from Kenneth C.M. Young, who was actually a co-composer for Little Big Planet along with Daniel Pemberton. What an unique list of works. All the songs from this soundtrack are an absolute bop. I really love the CPU Plaza's theme, and it's probably my favorite track from the game, but I gotta mention the GPU Jungle song, I'm Your GPU. Back when I first played the game, I didn't really pay too much attention to this one until very recently when I was replaying it for this video. I found a cave that has lyrics engraved on the wall, and those are actually the song's lyrics. It's pretty cool actually. Now, does the game have an ending? Yes, actually. After finishing the 4 zones in the game, a gate opens in the basement of the CPU Plaza, leading you to the final zone of the game, 1994 Throwback, where you actually gotta fight against the Demo 1 T-Rex from one of the first graphical showcases of the PS1. The screen's aspect ratio turns into 4:3 and you gotta dodge attacks from the T-Rex till you get to hit him in the eye a couple times. Once you hit him twice, you get a classic bait and switch, psych, there's another phase to this boss fight moment as the T-Rex gets a makeover and the screen goes back to HD resolution. So anyway, you beat him up using gold and platinum trophies, and once that's finally dealt with, the credits roll. And that's Astro's Playroom. Wait, one more thing. Of course, they wouldn't let you finish the game without collecting the artifacts for the new generation of PlayStation, the PS5. And then you're thrown into PlayStation Labo, which I forgot to talk about, shit. PlayStation Labo is the museum for all the artifacts and collectibles you obtain throughout your playthrough. And no, it is not a reference to Nintendo Labo, it's just short for laboratories. Come on. I love the idea of a giant museum for all the collectibles you find, and it is such a fun time to explore. Remember the puzzle pieces I mentioned at the beginning? Collecting all of those gives you this giant mural with amazing art showing the entire history of PlayStation. And don't even get me started on all the artifacts. You can interact with literally everything in one way or another. You can turn on the second model of the PS1 with the attachable screen and it will load up a game. Hey, matter of fact, you can do that with literally every PSP as well. There's so much you can interact with. If you punch the PSVR headset, the lenses turn on and you get to see Astro Bot from the VR game that came out before this one. Which is very heartwarming now, knowing that Team Asobi finally got their chance to make a complete, real game with Astro Bot releasing now. All their Astro Bot games have always been limited to being tech demos for the new Sony hardware. It happened for the PS4, the PSVR, and now the PS5. And yeah, I know they made Astro Bot Rescue Mission as a standalone game, but you needed a PSVR to play that game, and that's not fair because I never had one, so I'm not gonna count it. Overall though, I love Astro's Playroom. It's a really fun, short and sweet platformer, and I'm not kidding when I say short and sweet, I mean it. How Long to Beat says the average time to beat this game is 3 hours, but that's being generous honestly, it's more like a 2.5 hours. It's a really short game that leaves you wanting more, which is why I'm so excited to play Astro Bot. Eventually. I can't afford it right now, but when I do play it, I'll definitely make a video on it. Probably. Meanwhile, I got Astro's Playroom to keep me company. They even updated the game recently to add the latest PS5 artifacts, and they added a countdown for Astro's next adventure in Astro Bot. So if you haven't played Astro's Playroom somehow or haven't 100%ed it, go and play it right now. It's one of my favorite PS5 games. I can hardly believe it's a free game. That's because it is not free actually, it is locked behind a $400 console purchase. So it is technically the most expensive game on the PS5.